Thanks everyone for joining. Great to see you. Great to see names. And sorry we're not in person this time, but hopefully for those of you that I've not met before, we'll have a chance at some point to do this again or to come to your campuses later in the year. So my name, for those of you that don't know me, is Stephen Kahn. I'm editor and co-founder of The Conversation. And yeah, I've been doing this now for about 13, 14 years. And I think sort of from the very beginning, this sense of community building and partnerships been pretty central to what we've been trying to do here. Yes, it takes the form of a media product, a news outlet, but actually, what we've essentially been doing is sort of layering thousands and thousands of academics together, along with other professionals and people on the edges of academia. And I think that there remains significant potential in that field for growing this community and bringing further opportunities to people within this community. And I think prototypes, which we'll come on to in a moment, is a really central example of that. I'll just mention some others just before, just because I've got the opportunity. But there's a few other programs that we've been involved in recent months that again, they just sort of add to this sense of us taking academia just beyond academia into areas of policy making, media to some extent, secondary education as well, I think quite interestingly. So one event that we've just built a partnership with is called the Villars Institute, which is essentially a route into secondary education, particularly in the IB area globally. And that essentially brings school children together to be environmental leaders of the future. And what we've been able to do already with Villars is bring academic voices into that sphere. So that's something that I hope is going to grow in the years to come. In a slightly different vein, one of the really successful partnerships that we've built in the last year has been with Videnskap, which is a Danish publication based in Copenhagen, very science-led, similar in ethos to The Conversation, but really taking us into a market that we had no presence in, virtually no awareness of The Conversation in. And it's been a good opportunity for some contributors to build new partnerships with researchers at Danish institutions and to really lift profiles in the Nordic region more widely, actually. Vision Europe's another partnership that we've been building, which is a series of conferences. The main one based around the future of Europe, but they do a big environmental conference as well. And again, that's something that it's got a very direct route to policy making, very strong presence at the European Commission, and it's been an opportunity for political scientists and environmental researchers again to engage at that level with us as the sort of conduit. Similarly, we've had formal media partnerships this year with the Political Studies Association, which was held, the annual conference was held in Oxford, and we ran a series of events and training sessions there. And likewise with the British International Studies Association annual event, which took place in Brighton. And there's a few other of these things kind of brewing at the moment, and I hope to be able to tell you more about those in due course. But back to prototypes, which I think's really one of the most successful examples of us layering these communities on top of each other and trying to sort of expand opportunities out and bring people together. And last year I first engaged with prototypes 2 years ago and attended their annual event, which takes place in November in Dubai. So the first event I went to was in 2024. I was really struck by the dynamism of the event, the cross-section of academic research that was uh, on display there, and really the kind of solutions that were being exhibited, and the potential to really kind of transform or benefit society. And it kind of immediately struck me that there were potentially opportunities to open up to conversation contributors and others within our network. The organizers were very kindly involved us quite deeply last year in the development of that project. So it grew quite significantly last year from being purely an exhibition of 100 PhD projects, all with kind of sustainable development goal aims in mind. So it grew from that, and that remains at the heart of the project. But essentially, last year, welded onto that was another 50 papers that were presented, largely by more senior academics, and three of whom are here joining me today to talk a little bit about the opportunities that were afforded to them by prototypes, but also, I think, perhaps more broadly about some of the networking that went on there, and hopefully about some of the fun that we had, because it was a tremendously enjoyable event. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce today Professor Patricia Maguire from UCD in Dublin, Professor Jeremy Howick, who's the Professor of Empathetic Healthcare and the Director of the Stonygate Centre at the University of Leicester, and Dr. Michael Head from the University of Southampton, all of whom, as I say, were participants in last year's prototypes, and I'm really eager to hear their reflections on the event. And yeah, maybe if they could tell us a little bit. I mean, Patricia, I might come to you first, because it was like me, it was your second time at prototypes. And we didn't actually introduce you to prototypes. We kind of met there, and I'm delighted to see you've subsequently contributed to the conversation since. So I wonder if you'd be so kind to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. So a pleasure to join everybody from sunny Dublin today. Not as hot as London, but getting there. So as Stephen said, my name is Patricia Maguire. I'm a professor of biochemistry in University College Dublin, and I'm also the director of a research institute, the UC Institute for Discovery, so very interdisciplinary science. And as Stephen said, my first engagement with prototypes for humanities was with my PhD student, one of my PhD students in my lab. So I'm a biochemist, and I have, I suppose, for the last 20 years, been using finding new signals in the blood, using, I suppose, biomarker driven research, and using a lot of AI now in the last number of years. And so really trying to develop real world healthcare solutions that change lives. That's the whole idea. And so I had a PhD student who's now graduated, Dr. Ella Fui, and we applied back in 2024, and she was selected as one of the top 100 global innovations to present at prototypes in 24. And that was really successful. It opened my eyes to the event. It was an incredible opportunity, both for her, but also for me as the supervisor, an absolutely incredible opportunity. And I then was fortunate enough to be one of the 50 professors that Stephen mentioned there back in 2025 who presented a paper. It was a different paper. So the first year we brought her PhD, the second year I brought another project from the lab and presented on that. And it was incredible. I presented as one of the 50 professors, but I was also asked to present in the Dubai Future Forum, which was concurrently running there, and be part of a panel discussion. So that was an incredible opportunity. And from that have built so many international partnerships, so many interdisciplinary connections, and I've also published in the conversation. So, there was so much opportunity there as an academic. And yeah, I suppose if anybody has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And also, Stephen, if there's anything that I've missed, please let me know. But just the impact on myself, and the meaningfulness in terms of the different interactions that I had, it was just phenomenal. Couldn't be happier, actually.
Thank you, Patricia. Michael Head, I wonder if I can come to you, because I think you did actually engage with prototypes directly through an invitation that I opened up at this event last year when we were in person. Is that right? Sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo here. Michael Parker. Okay, I think we're okay. I think we're better now. So yeah, Michael, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the process of your engagement with prototypes, which, as I say, it came about because I think I announced it at the event last year, and then you subsequently applied, and were your PhD researcher was successful in securing a spot.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to say up front that I'm expecting a new shed to be delivered any minute, so it's possible I may have to break off and finish my spiel when I come back, having shifted the shed into the back garden. So I'll keep you posted on the sound of the doorbell. But so yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Stephen. So I essentially saw the flyer that was available at last year's event and thought that looked interesting. So I went and spoke to a couple of my PhD students. My areas of research is mostly around, I suppose, big data labeling and also digital health and innovation as well. So I'd never heard of Prototypes for Humanity, but it looked interesting. So I said to Ang Bang Do, one of my PhD students, well, a couple of them applied, but Ang Bang applied, and a few weeks later, got the email to say, yes, you've been accepted, 3% acceptance rate. So I said, very well done. Congratulations. Off you go to Dubai. And then a few weeks after that, I got an email from the Prototypes for Humanities people. I think I see Sarah online there. So I was very grateful to receive that email to say, would you like to come too? So I said, yes, I would. Thank you. And so I did go to, and we both had an excellent week in Dubai. So I can thoroughly recommend it. And as Patricia and Stephen have said, the mix of people there is brilliant. The bright minds there are absolutely phenomenal. And for innovation and enterprise and sort of businessy things that us academics don't necessarily know very much about, but sort of it's somewhere over there somewhere. We'd like to sort of get involved in enterprise. We don't quite know how to. Dubai is quite a good place for that because everyone does that sort of thing there. So it was a very inspiring week for both of us. Angbang, since we come back, has enrolled on a couple of enterprise training courses to look at developing our big data labeling product that we showed there. And we've had various conversations with people saying, because of course the troubles in the Middle East over the last 6 months or so has not been, I suppose, ideal in furthering collaborations. But I'll say for now that yeah, it was an excellent week. We would recommend it to early career researchers and students, and also to sort of more senior academics and professors and so on. And yeah, it's just a very, very invigorating and interesting week. And I think people will get a lot out of it. So happy to take any further questions beyond that. But I'll hand back to Stephen and also await my shed. Thanks very much.
I think we're all eagerly awaiting photographs of that shed once you've completed it. So
can be provided. I'll do a conversation article on it.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Michael. And you've both of you mentioned the sort of interdisciplinary aspects of it, which I'm keen to hear a little bit more about in due course. But just before, Jeremy, I come to you, I should also just mention that one of the outcomes that I think has been a development of prototypes in the last year has been taking projects following through from the exhibition itself to market. And three projects are now active that were born at the event last year. I think one came from Imperial College, one from one of the big Swiss institutions, and I think another, yeah, so ETH Zurich, and I think another came out of Harvard. So sort of very real examples of product development coming out of the project that otherwise may well have just remained in the lab. Jeremy, can you tell us a bit about your experience of prototypes, please?
Yes, thank you, Stephen, for inviting me. Thank you to the conversation. I see Sarah there. Thank you, everyone. I research empathy, and which is often considered to be a fluffy thing, but we treat empathy as if it were a drug. In other words, we do randomized controlled trials, look at the cost effectiveness, and some of us have seen the report from Donna Ockenden. They came out yesterday or the day before yesterday now, and they named the same thing. Lack of empathy is a real important, serious cause of harm. So we're trying to improve that in the NHS. As AI encroaches on healthcare, it's affecting the quality in some good ways and some bad ways of the human connection in healthcare. So my project at Prototypes was related to that, to an AI empathy observatory where we make sure that the AI technology which is introduced, that the human connection is not lost. Um, but just to go back a bit and talk about impact in general, so I think the conversation does offer that. I think it's our moral duty to take things from the lab into the world. Our salaries are paid in part or full by taxpayers. So this morning, the bin man couldn't decide to work from home. They had to pay taxes to pay our salary, and the conversation really helps us, and our prototypes helps us do that as academics. Take things that are ideas in the lab, put them into practice. So the conversation does it by helping spread the word. And I've had some of my articles in the conversation be picked up by major news outlets, and it's led to policy conversations, including with the NHS ombudsman last week. It also helps us raise money for grants, where most major grant funding bodies insist that we communicate with the public. So showing that you've published with the conversation does improve your chances. Um, I was also fortunate enough to win the Sir Paul Curran Award for my contributions to the conversation, and that's helped a lot, also helped my career. With regards to prototypes specifically, as I mentioned, I went there as a professor to talk about the AI Empathy Observatory, and I was amazed by the whole thing. I had moderate expectations, but they were far exceeded. The thing that struck me most dramatically was the sand pit, where me and a few other people were there with the Dubai Health Ministry to pitch ideas, and the health ministry just chose one and implemented it within a few weeks. And those of us who are work in the healthcare system here in the UK know that it takes years. This was a matter of minutes when the decision was made, and months before something changed in the real world. Sadly, it wasn't my idea that was chosen at this end, but I did witness how fast things did change there. There are also some amazing collaborations, which are for me ongoing now with people in different countries in Jordan and Dubai and Italy, etc. So it really is a great event to help boost the impact of what we do, which is part of our duties now as academics, both moral duties as well as our kind of duties to our employers and to the funding bodies and so on. So I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I wonder if I could just dwell on this sort of interdisciplinary aspect to the program, because it's something that we in the sector hear an awful lot about. It's like one of these buzzwords, we've all got to be interdisciplinary and sort of engaging with people in different departments, and I'm sure sort of everyone here has sort of heard a lot about that, and sometimes experienced the difficulties of trying to make that happen in reality, even within individual institutions. And I was sort of so struck at prototypes, at how that just kind of happened quite organically, and I think maybe it's just having a bunch of smart people in the same hotel, hanging. I mean, it's more than that though, because the prototypes people kind of proactively sort of socialized everyone. They've got everyone eating together, drinking together, sort of having fun, and there was just like a real kind of dynamic that felt. It didn't feel forced. It just felt sort of really natural, where sort of bonds were being made, friendships being created, and people coming from often really quite different research backgrounds and having quite interesting discussions that I'm fairly certain have gone on to generate other projects, or at least other ideas around projects. Certainly conversation pieces have come out of that sort of collaboration. So I don't know if Patricia maybe you could come in on that. Was that sort of a fair reflection of your experience as well?
I mean, I couldn't have said it better, Stephen. And I'm the person in my university that's tasked with interdisciplinarity, which I could talk to for the day almost, on how it's wonderful, but it's also a little bit inhibitory as well. But I thought that the environment created in prototypes, exactly as you said, was so wonderful to promote it just naturally, because we all know that it's the boundary of the disciplines where the magic happens and the next big thing will come. We all know this, but it's very difficult. But that week in Dubai, the 2 weeks now I've spent at the prototypes both years, I mean, I now have collaborations spanning experts in artificial intelligence, engineering, which I never would have had, public policy out of Italy. These people now have become not only just collaborators, but friends. And wonderful, and it's a wonderful environment that naturally creates that connection. And I think, in my own research, as I said, I'm a biochemist working in the field of maternal health and driving change, hopefully, in for patients and for people and for their families. And I prototypes has helped me to move the dial, shift the dial. Those 2 weeks have shifted the dial more, I think, than I could have done myself, even over the course of 2 years.
Thanks, Patricia. Michael's engaging in an interdisciplinary manner with his shed at the moment. So, Jeremy, maybe I'll come to you.
Yes.
I mean, I saw you socializing at length at prototypes last year. What did that yield in a professional sense?
I think I went to bed before you, Stephen, just to be clear. So yeah, I'm an interdisciplinary researcher. I've got an undergraduate degree in engineering, a PhD in philosophy, and I work as a clinical epidemiologist. It all makes sense, but it takes a while to explain. So interdisciplinarity is a buzzword that everyone likes to talk about, but making it happen in reality is altogether different, because at the end of the day, when you propose an interdisciplinary project, someone evaluating it is from one discipline or the other, and they fail to see. But like you said, Stephen, getting a bunch of smart people in the room together, who can see real change happening in real time. There's two things I think that made that event promote interdisciplinarity. One is the pace of change. You see things can happen from bench to bedside really fast. Second of all, people being inspired. And the third thing is breaking down barriers, getting them to socialize together, have lunch together, um, in that environment. So even now, Patricia just said that she's working in maternal health. I'm going to reach out to her, and share some ideas. So it really is
I've
a
already
place.
got you on my list, Steve,
Oh, good.
Jeremy. I've already got
Okay.
you on my list. Don't worry. I'm
Okay.
gonna linking into you right as we speak.
Yeah. So that's an example. So I wasn't aware of the extent to which, but people who go, also who choose to go there. Dubai's a new country. It's growing fast. It's they think of something and it becomes a reality. Whereas here you get tied up in all kinds of red tape. I work with big organizations like the university and the NHS, and despite often the best of intentions and even the competence of the people, they're stuck in a system that slows them down to the point of stopping obvious things. Whereas Dubai is the opposite. Someone thinks it's a good idea, they just point their finger at three other people, and it happens. That's inspirational. So you can see how you're talking to someone over coffee, or you listen to them give a speech, and you speak to them after, and then an hour later, Sarah puts you into a room with a sandpit or a meeting, and then if they like it, they turn it in. They wave a wand, it seems, and and there it is. So yeah, it really is a great place for interdisciplinary collaboration. Thank you.
And I think what you've touched on there is really important, that actually there's a sort of level of engagement with the project that's senior in terms of government, but also then connecting out to industry as well. So you're sort of connecting research to policy to industry, and yeah, different types of research and bringing them together. Michael, just while you were away, moving the shed through to the garden there, we were having a bit of a chat about the interdisciplinary nature of the event, some of the bonds that were able to be created. I'm just curious to know about your experience of prototypes. Did you meet people from other spheres? Did your PhD candidates develop the kind of connections that you would hope they would?
Yeah, so I caught the latter end of the conversation around interdisciplinarity. So, and yeah, I think that is one of the best bits about prototypes is people from different countries, different cultures, but also different scientific disciplines. And it is those sort of chats over coffee with someone who wouldn't otherwise get to speak to. And you never quite know when that sort of that 5 minute chat will, become useful in sort of the months or years ahead. I think the sort of networking is probably the thing I enjoyed most about prototypes is speaking to all the different people there. And yeah, and my PhD students, sort of in the exhibition, where he spent a fair amount of his time speaking to people there. Again, the sort of the exhibition stalls that were around him were covered sort of engineering and public health and some of the social sciences and so on. So he got a lot out of it in terms of, as I think Jeremy was talking about there, kind of how Dubai does things. We both got a lot out of that. Neither of us have been there before, so it was quite an eye-opening experience to see just how enthusiastically they drive or innovation and so on. But yeah, the conversations with different people are so vital, and they give you a different perspective on your own work because different disciplines will ask you different questions about your own work than a similar-minded colleague will. So you get to shape your ideas a little bit more. So we spoke to people outside of the health discipline, people working in shipping and law. One of the sort of government people we spoke to was a lawyer who works in their sort of innovations and patents department or similar. So we sat down and had a half-hour conversation with him about how our sort of big data labeling product could work, and we're in the early stages of working with them for them to provide some of the legal data as a bit of a sort of a case study for us to use and to develop our idea further. So those sorts of things can come out of the conversations that you have. So if you do go to prototypes, then be prepared to network like a demon, and you will probably reap the rewards from it, I would say.
That's really interesting, because that feels like a long way from your research and not automatically something that I would expect would come out of a traditional conference. When I think about like what would you get out of an event like that, it might be, do you meet some social scientists who can sort of facilitate the kind of vaccination programs or sort of public acceptance of the kind of vaccination programs that you might advocate. But yeah, actually sort of engaging you with lawyers and sort of facilitating the kind of legal acceptance of a program feels that's kind of fascinating. I would never have guessed that you would have had that kind of experience there, Michael.
No, and I wasn't anticipating to have that experience either. Again, I went into this sort of very open-minded, but also slightly naive in terms of just not knowing, I suppose, what I was stepping into. Looking forward to it, but not quite knowing what was going to happen. So yeah, and yeah, the people who pass the exhibition stands each day, lots and lots of different people from all the different countries, and yeah, we have had a couple of emails with someone from the shipping industry who's interested in sort of the large language models and machine learning that's behind our labeling product. There's potential across different disciplines and sectors. And it was actually, I think, the Dubai-based lawyer, the government lawyer, who kind of emphasize that point, I think, on day one or day two, and we sort of took that on board actually. And if people sort of stopped and showed an interest in our work, or if we had that random conversation in the hotel foyer or whatever, then that just kind of tuned our brains a little bit to so making the most out of those conversations, as opposed to just sort of politely chatting for a couple of minutes and then moving on. But in Dubai, every conversation is a business opportunity, which again is not a very academic mindset per se, but there it certainly was true.
Thanks. Just two other guests here from the university network. You're probably wondering if the event's going ahead this year. It very much is. From the 14th to the 19th of November are the dates that I have. And Michael's experience of applying last year, I think, or Michael's candidates, PhD candidates who applied. The timeline's similar. You could step away from this event and encourage participation, application, and be at this year's event in November. I just wonder if there's any questions from around the room. I guess particularly from those here who may not have heard of prototypes before. Does anyone care to jump in? You'll all be applying then. I think everyone's building sheds.
Far too hot for that sort of thing today. We've just moved it and that's on the back burner for maybe the next week or something.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd be jumping straight into it, Michael.
Certainly not.
Okay. Any sort of further thoughts? We can close the session, but we do have sort of 5 minutes or so if people want to say anything else. Jeremy, Patricia.
I got one thing. Is there going to be an opportunity? It's a bit of a leading question. To because I was aware of the connection between the conversation and prototypes because I heard about prototypes via the conversation. Um, and I think that they did achieve at the prototypes event, interdisciplinarity, taking ideas into the world. Um, and there was a lot of fantastic communicators there. But will there be an opportunity to kind of educate people who would like to know more about, you know, communicating with the wider public at this year's prototypes event?
Uh, I'd sort of love that. I'm sure we will have discussions about how we can engage, how the conversation can engage with prototypes in coming months, and I'd sort of love to develop discussions and possibly have a formal session there. I'd certainly love to suggest a formal session where we can talk about communicating research. And I think that sort of slightly happened in a kind of on the edges way last year, where I think we commissioned 10 articles out of the
Wow.
so there were what 150 people present. The conversation had three editors present, and we commissioned 10 well, we published 10 pieces, some of which were republished and quite widely distributed, um, including I think one went to the Independent and one ended up I think in Scientific American. So I'd be sort of really eager to develop that, and possibly sort of formalize it. But I think we're probably at the stage of well, we're certainly before having those discussions, and I think when I think back to this time last year, we'd no idea how we would line up. I mean, I think I'd expressed a desire to go and sort of meet some of the contributors. And I'd been involved in the shortlisting of the professorial candidates, which Patricia was also involved in that element. But we hadn't really thought about how does the conversation sort of participate. and it slightly kind of evolved sort of quite naturally. But maybe this year, um, maybe that's a discussion for me to sort of start sooner rather than later, and think
Because
about how we
there's a
make.
natural sort of there's a natural synergy in the following way. I'm mostly an academic nerd who can communicate better than some, but I've been engaged in more and more commercial activities in the last year, and I'm amazed how there's a definitely a strong overlap between the hook of an article and hooking people to who you want to buy something, or hooking an investor. It's almost the same skill. So there's a natural overlap there. Um, and I'm also amazed, just like most academics, including previously me, couldn't express their ideas in a way that a non-specialist could understand. I'm amazed how many people have ideas which are potentially very commercializable, but are unable to express it fast. And when that creates a barrier to put it in practice, because the people who are capable of putting it into practice or investing in it don't have the patience or the expertise to if you don't hook them in 15 words, I'm exaggerating a bit, but if you don't hook them in 15 words, you lost them. Um, that's just not a question, more an idea that emerged from this conversation.
I I think you're absolutely right, and I'm sure that's an experience that is and knowledge that's shared by all of our comms colleagues here. I think, so much of the time over the past decade or so, I've gone into discussions with academics and professors and incredibly smart people, but explaining what it is that they do is sometimes not. This isn't sorry, it isn't a criticism of you guys, but it's you three are very good at it, but it's not necessarily typical of the sector. And so often, like, when I go around and visit institutions, and we just have kind of informal discussions with, see, often very senior academics, and they may have been working on projects for their entire lives, and you'll have a 10-minute discussion, and you get to sort of minute 9.5, and suddenly they say something, and I'm kind of like, why did you not tell me that at the beginning? Like, that is the thing that I, as a sort of person with a journalism background, am interested in. But also, I think you're right, Jeremy. I think, potential investors, policy people, like, they're just wired differently, and I think that there are skills that can be learned and transferred by these sorts of seminars, and again, I think so often this just, and it's a shame that we've ended up working remotely today, because I think so often these are skills that are best learned and best shared in person. They just come out of sort of quite natural discussions in a room, and I think that happens brilliantly at prototypes, because everyone's kind of out there, chilled out, you're in a nice place, nice hotel, the venues are great, the coffee's good, conversations flow, and skills flow, and I think it's a sort of fantastic example for sort of skill sharing and knowledge sharing. Okay, I'm sort of very happy, comms colleagues, to take direct questions on any of this. If you want to know more about anything the conversation does, but specifically if you want to know about prototypes, I can try and answer questions directly, or I can forward inquiries to Sarah Ward, who's listening in, or other members of the prototypes team, if need be. But thanks so much for your time. And thanks so much to the panelists. I know you've kind of spent the last few days wondering, are we coming to London? Are we not coming to London? But if you'd been coming, Michael wouldn't have got your shed would have been like in your neighbour's porch or something at the moment, Michael. So there you go. There's a benefit to having not come.
Yeah, everyone would have probably left my shed in someone else's shed somewhere. So that would have probably been a nightmare to resolve.
Brilliant. All right. Well, good luck with that, and great to see everyone. And we shall see you again soon, hopefully.
Thank
Can
you.
I
Bye-bye.
just say thank you, Jeremy, Michael, and Patricia for sharing your experiences, and to you, Stephen, for sharing the session. And just a reminder that we have an unconference session at 3 p.m. today. It's an opportunity to talk about the topics that have arisen from today's discussions. The links are being posted in the chat tab, I believe. I hope you can all access them. And then we're having a break from now until 10 past 2. And then thereafter, we'll all come back together in a plenary session on tackling structural barriers to success for academics from minority groups. So hopefully we'll see you then. Thank you so much.